Welcome everyone to our AdWords coaching webinar. This is the first time we've had a webinar designed to help our clients understand and improve their online marketing. And we've decided to do AdWords because it's a pretty confusing topic. And the aim of today is to impart some sort of fundamental key information to you, so you've got a better understanding of how it works, and then can make more informed questions to us, I think. So, and also decisions about how you spend your money. And I'm excited because the aim for us is to connect with you better, and I think this is potentially a really good way to do it because you guys can jump on at any stage. You can also look at the recording and you can share it with your team. So the aim of today's, the structure of today is I'm going to give you a bit of an overview about what AdWords is, and for roughly half of you will know exactly what it is, but there's another group of you here today who haven't used AdWords or might be thinking about doing it, so that'll be informative. And then I'm going to hand over to Adam Carroll, who runs our AdWords in our office, and he's an expert in the area. He runs, because we run AdWords for lots and lots of practices, we're very good at running it for vet practices. And he's going to talk about how we set up a campaign, and also what are some of the key features, the measurement features. And then we're going to get into questions and answers. And I just reinforce, please write down any of your questions. And you know, I'm very happy for you to be embarrassed by those questions. Meaning, I don't want you to be embarrassed, but a lot of people, when they ask me questions about AdWords, go, "Oh, I'm not sure if this is a good question." But all your questions at the moment will be really useful for us, because that'll help us convey the information more effectively to you. Now I'm just going to change my screen to a little presentation so that you can have something to look at while I'm talking for a minute. And then I'm going to hand over to Adam. So I'll just make my screen larger. You should now be able to see AdWords service, which says specialised AdWords expertise of the veterinary industry. And that's what we do. And I'll go to the first screen, which is an intro. Now, as I said, this is, for half of you will know this, but for half of you, you'll be interested to know this. AdWords is Google's paid service, and it helps people find you online. Now, with 80% of local business search now done on phones, this is a picture of a phone here, obviously, for a clinic in Eltham, there's not a lot of space on the screen for you to appear. And so one of the benefits of AdWords is where you're not appearing, and that does apply in lots of cases, having an ad appearing will get you at the top here, and you do pay for it. So you're paying to get someone to actually, when they actually click on it. However, it gives you a visibility that you didn't have before, and it has some other benefits as well. So if I've made a list here of the sorts of problems it can solve. Suburb visibility. For practices who haven't done any improvement to their online marketing, so they might have a basic website, but they've done nothing else with it, they're often invisible in surrounding suburbs or areas. Well, if you use AdWords, you can become visible instantly in those surrounding suburbs, which gives you a chance that people will call you. Now, not everyone's going to respond to this ad by either clicking on it or ringing that number. But for those people that do, and it's probably about 20 to 25% of people that do, then you've got them on the telephone. We've got a chance for them to give you a call, which is really good. And we measure how many people do call you. Brand visibility is the second area it's really good for. If, for instance, if you've got your visibility in your local area is poor due to a competitor, and I'll talk about an example of that later, you can make yourself suddenly visible, and suddenly people can see you. You might also want to promote a particular service that is new, or you want to grow, like grooming or a cattery, and you can do that through ads. You can suddenly make it appear to your local environment that you have a cattery. And lastly, you can run promotions. Now, we haven't done a lot of promotions, but there's certainly opportunity for you, if you wanted to put the text in here that related to a particular promotion to encourage people to use your service. Now, I wanted to use a case study to talk to you about the effectiveness of AdWords before we get into the technical details of how you run them. And I find that case studies are good because they're real clients, real pet clients who've used the service and had a benefit. And it's probably pretty self-evident from these comments from Justin. I asked Justin if we could tell you guys what his experience was, and this is what he told me. And he said that was fine. He'd be very happy to do that. I'll just read through them. Oh, by the way, Justin's in the Gold Coast area, and was having some trouble with their clinic not being visible. And so their phone call traffic coming in was quite low. So first of all, it says it's been a great success, and that's fantastic. Well, how's it been a great success? Well, first of all, previously, the clinic was not visible in the key surrounding suburbs. And I mentioned that before. For most practices, almost every practice in Australia that has not done the work on their online marketing, that will be the case. Hard to imagine as it is, that will be the case. And I keep talking about this because it's one of the key areas that clinics can improve on. Since starting with AdWords, we've become visible. Okay, so how does he know that? Well, his business is continuing to grow at a strong rate, and we attribute AdWords with bringing in a whole bunch of new business. He said, I appreciate the quality of the PetPack team and their support, and I think that's a really important part of you being a PetPack client is you can access our knowledge base, and this part of this process is to make that knowledge-based knowledge dissemination work better. He said, I couldn't do this by myself, and I think that's important because AdWords is a service that you can access as any consumer can use AdWords. And for various reasons, you've got other things to do in the practice. You know, your better use of your time is to be being a vet or running a business. His view was he couldn't do it by himself, so that's why he gets us to do it. And lastly, he said it's good knowing that the service is run efficiently, and that's where it comes to the stats we're going to talk to you about. Now, what I'd like to do is hand you over to Adam, and what I'm going to do is change the settings on the webinar so Adam can take control, and that means also that now we'll get into how it works. So as I do that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and bear with me while I do this. All right, so Adam Carroll, welcome, and thank you for joining us, is now our host.
Excellent. Thanks for that, James, and welcome everyone to the webinar. I'm just going to get my screen up here and see if I can share it so we can look back at that presentation. And what I'm going to be talking about, oops, wrong button. What I'm going to be talking about is just sort of the process we go through to get a AdWords campaign set up. And anyone I've spoken with and any account I've already set up, you're going to be familiar with some of these items. So I'll just talk through them now. So one of the first things I like to do is get in touch with sort of the practice manager, business owner directly, and have a bit of a conversation around a budget and schedule for the campaign. The great thing about AdWords is that it can work on very small budgets and it scales really well to large budgets as well. If you find something that's working, you can invest in it very easily. Or if you're finding that it's not working the way you want it to, you can scale it back as well. So it's very flexible that way. The schedule is a very important part of setting up the campaign as well, because you only want your ads to be visible when there's an opportunity for someone to actually get in touch with your practice. Now, this is one of the biggest areas that are changing at the moment as we get more and more online booking systems. So you're going to start to be able to take bookings in at all hours, and that's going to have an impact on when you might want to be advertising. Now, these two factors come together to influence what we call the daily spend. And that's the amount that you're up to able to spend on any given day. We often recommend around $10 as a good daily spend budget. And an account that's running efficiently can get 10 or more clicks based on that, roughly $1 per click. If it's a little bit more expensive, sometimes it can get up to $2.50 and $3.50. And the reason for that is because AdWords works on an auction-based system. So what you'll have is if you've got 5 practices all competing over similar keywords in a similar area, it's going to drive the cost up a little bit. But there are a couple of ways that you can bring the cost down. I'm going to talk about those a little bit later. Another really important area that we set up is the radius for your account. You can see over here, we've got quite a little complicated radius here set up in multiple locations. And you may want to do that to target specific suburbs. You might have multiple practices, or you just want to have a very tight level of control about where your ads are being seen. So for instance, if you're a practice in New South Wales, you don't want your ads showing up in Queensland. And we make sure that we control that so your ads are going just to the right places. Now, after we've had a talk about that, we'll talk a little bit about the ad groups. And this is sort of the most important part of your campaign. What this is all about is determining what's important to your business and then structuring the account around that. So often we'll do this based on particular services, like James mentioned. You might want to be promoting a cattery or a grooming service. So we want to make sure that we've got groups that correspond to your priorities. We don't want to just do everything equally. We want to be focused on those areas that are most important. Now, location-based ad groups is another very important thing that we've been working on. If you have a suburb nearby and you're not very visible there, it might be worth setting up an ad group that targets just that area and serves up very specific ads to that area as well. So you're going to start getting a lot more visibility, and that's how we're able to help improve visibility in a case like Reedy Creek. Search modifiers is another area. Someone might be looking for a very particular type of service, or they might be looking for a particular species, and that's where we will be adding in sort of particular modifiers and ad groups that will make sure that they're getting a very relevant ad. Now, the most common one for this would be something like dog vet. So we might create a list of generic search terms, including the word dog, to help catch those people. Now, the next aspect that we talk about in terms of these ad groups are the keywords. And this is what's going to correspond with what people are actually looking for when they're doing a search. So if they say vet near me, and we have a keyword in your ad group, vet near me, then it's going to show your ad. Now, there's a couple of different ways of setting up these keywords, and it's all about how specific you want to be. So you may have a very specific service, could be like a TPLO surgery, and you don't want to show up for related terms. You only want to show up for that very specific term. So we're able to lock it down so that you're not getting people having a look at your ads who aren't interested in that service. There's also what's called negative keywords, and this completely locks out search phrases you don't want to appear. So a very good example of this is, say, the word cheap. You may not want customers who are looking for a cheap veterinary service, so we exclude those people from being able to see and click on your ads. Now, the ads themselves, which you can see just down here, are text-based content, and this one here that we're looking at is what's called a static ad, in that it's always going to show up the same way. When someone searches for those keywords that we're referring to, they're going to get this ad displayed to them. There is another type, which is called a dynamic ad, and that actually uses some of the search phrase that that person put into the search engine in your ad content. Now, there are a couple of risks with this, and that's associated with particular veterinary clinics being named after suburbs. You may find that your competitor's name is showing up in your ads because that's what someone was looking for, and we've got some strategies for helping mitigating that if it does come up. The last type of ad that I wanted to talk about is what's called a call-only ad. This is a very restricted ad that's perfect for mobile devices because it prompts people to call, and there's a lot less content on there compared to one of these, but we've been finding that they actually convert very effectively because the client doesn't even need to go to your website. They can just get in touch with you immediately. Now, the last thing that I'll talk about as part of our setup process are these extras, which are extensions and adjustments. And these add extra content on to your advertisements. And this can include your location information connected to your Google My Business listing. It can also include lists of your services, little call-out features, special offers, and even your phone number as well. So you can get those calls coming through your actual ad copy. Adjustments are just about adjusting a particular group. You can see over here it says little bid adjustment. So if we're finding that one of these groups is performing really well, we might want to pump it up, or we may even want to pump up one that's not performing as well as we'd like it to, just to improve something like the positioning. Now, I'm just going to move on to our next slide so we can talk a little bit about how we measure success in an account. Okay. Now, you may have heard some of these terms before, and I'll go through and explain each of them. And the important thing to remember is no one statistic is a perfect measurement of how successful your account is. You sort of need to look at the bigger picture. I'm going to talk about that after I've explained them. So to start off with, we've got the click-through rate, and this is very simply just a ratio of how many times your ads were shown versus how many times they were clicked on. Now, this can vary wildly and is very much dependent on how many times an ad has been shown. For instance, if it's only been shown twice and it's been clicked on once, you'll get a click-through rate of 50%, which sounds amazing, but there's not really enough data there to say for sure if it's working. So it's important to make sure we've got enough impressions to make a good sort of analysis if that's actually working for your account. Now, what we use this particular statistic for is making sure your ads are relevant. If you're finding that the click-through rate is very low, then maybe it's not relevant to the searches that you're showing up for, and you might need to either adjust the ad copy or which keywords are in the account. Next one here is average position. Because it's an auction, there's places allocated depending on how you do in that auction. So there's first, second, third, and so on. Obviously, the goal is to be in first place, and we use this statistic to figure out how often you're ending up in that first position. So look over here on my little chart, average position of 1.7, which means most of the time the position is 1, but as we look through this list, we can see sometimes it comes up in the second position. Now, this is important because the first position is the most expensive, but it also gives you the biggest number of impressions, and it gives you the largest amount of information to present to people. If you're in the second or greater position, you're going to get less information to show to people. Now, that might sound really bad, but often being in the second and third position means that your cost per click, which is the next thing we're going to be talking about, is a lot lower. So for instance, back on this one over here, we can see the average cost per click in the first position, $2.69. Now, you may often find that when you're in the second or third position, the cost per click goes down drastically. So you can actually get more clicks for your budget in the second or third position than if you showed up in first every time. Now, that's not to say that you want to set up your account to do just that, but it is something to keep in mind when you see an average position statistic. Now, cost per click is very simple. It's just how much you're charged every time someone clicks on one of your ads. And the beautiful thing about AdWords is you can show your ad 1,000,000 times and it will cost you nothing. It'll only start costing you money when someone clicks. Now, the cost per click is determined by a large number of factors, but the most important one is how relevant your ad is to what that person was looking for. So if they're looking for a cattery in Melbourne and you're not in Melbourne, you're way out of Melbourne, then it probably won't be very relevant, and your cost per click is going to be higher if you want to appear in that auction. Now, what you can do is if you have a very specific keyword and a very specific ad, and it takes them to a very specific page on your website, say for instance, it's Cattery Melbourne, and you actually have a page on your website that just says Cattery Melbourne with all the relevant content, you're going to be very relevant. And that means your average cost per click is going to be lower. And we'll talk a little bit later about how we sort of set up those landing pages to help this sort of goal. Now, total impressions is just the total number of times that your ads were seen. This will usually be quite a large number. We can see over here, this is 3,000 impressions. So that's how many times those ads were seen in total in all positions, not just in the top position, but in any of them, even on the second or third page of search results, as long as someone saw them. And we use this as a general health metric. If you're getting a very low number of impressions, say like 100 in a month, then you probably need to adjust the keywords and broaden it out a little bit to bring some more traffic into the account. Now, conversions are a really interesting area, and these can mean all sorts of things. So a very common conversion activity is that you want to measure every time someone goes to your website and clicks on your phone number, and the conversion action is they clicked on my phone number. But a conversion can be all sorts of things. It could be that they went to a particular page on your website, or they downloaded a particular file. We can set this up for a lot of different activities, and it helps to measure how effectively someone is going from being an impression to a click onto a conversion, doing that thing that you want them to do. We often set up accounts to measure phone calls coming from ads as conversions, because quite often those people are going to become a client. They're trying to get in touch with you, get more information, or make a booking. Now, an example of an account that has good performance is one that has enough impressions for us to determine that it's got a healthy amount of traffic. It's got enough clicks and a consequent click-through rate to tell us that what we're showing people is relevant. The average cost per click is a good amount, so we're making the best possible use of the budget. And the average position is, I usually like to see it at least in the top 3, so people don't need to go to another page in order to see your ads. And then that we're seeing some conversions, assuming that conversions have been set up. Now, conversions aren't an essential part of your campaign, but they do give us a little bit more information, and they can help us pick particular keywords. So for instance, we've got the nearest veterinary clinic, that one's got a conversion. So maybe I want to spend a little bit more money on that one just to make sure that I'm getting more conversions. Now, like I said at the start, these statistics are really important to understanding how your account works, but they don't give you the full picture on their own. So we can look at the trends. That's the performance of any of these over time and how they relate to each other. Often, as you improve an average position closer to 1, you're going to get a higher click-through rate as well. And you measure this historically. You make changes, you see what the impact of those changes are, and then you make some more changes. It sort of incrementally builds up the performance of your account. Now, the other important thing to mention are the business goals. So all of this is great. You can have a really high-performing account that's, statistically performing great, but if it's not coming back to what your goals are, then it's a bit of a waste of time. So if your big goal at the moment is to build up your category business and your AdWords account is very, very good at only bringing in, say, desexing clients, then it's not aligned properly with your business goals. And something that we strive for is to get in touch with you and talk to you about what your business goals are so that your AdWords account reflects those goals. So this is a very important area, and it's a big part of the reviews that we perform regularly on all of our accounts. So anyone who's talked to me about a review of their account, we would have gone through what the business goals are. Are there any new services? Do we need to stop advertising any of the current ones? Just getting an idea of what the priorities are. So move on from here. Now to the Q&A section. And James, are you there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to take back over the presentation at this point?
Well, I can. I think everyone can still see your screen. So why don't we just leave it on your screen?
Yeah, sure thing. If you've got any questions set up and you'd like to feed them through to me, I can't see them at the moment, but I'm happy to respond to any questions we might have.
Yeah, so I can see. So, guys, this is where I would encourage you to ask any questions, and I've actually listed a couple here, which are the sorts of questions we get for people who are starting to use AdWords. And actually, there's one in there where we've had an issue that we're able to resolve, which I want to discuss as well. So this is meant to. Sorry, Adam, you go.
Yeah, if you like, I'll start with this one, and if any questions come through, we can get to those after I've answered this one.
Yeah, go for it.
Cool. So this is one that I get quite frequently, which is, why is it hard to find my own ads when I search for a particular keyword on Google? And it's a really important question because it's actually quite difficult to catch your ads in the wild for a variety of reasons. One of the most important reasons for this is because of how the budget works. So say, for instance, you've got $10 to spend on a day on your clicks. You don't want to spend all of that budget straight away. You don't want to have $10 worth of spending before 9:30 a.m., for instance, if your ads are starting at 9. So what Google will do is it'll actually spread them out throughout the day, which will mean that during certain periods, your ads aren't going to be showing. So that's just a way of making sure that your budget doesn't get exhausted too early, because you want to give people a chance throughout the day. So that's one reason. Another reason is that Google's very good at tracking your browser history, what you've been up to recently, and it will actually know when it should be serving ads up to you, which is why we encourage people to use incognito mode or private mode when doing these sort of searches if you want to try and catch your ad, which, as I've explained, can be difficult, just so that you're cutting out any chance that it knows not to show you an ad because you've been on your clinic's website 10 times that day already, and it knows that you don't actually need to see an ad to know about this business. The other factor that's important is the fact that AdWords is an auction, and you won't win the auction every single time, even if the variables don't change very much, just because of how Google determines who the victor is. So, for instance, you might be in the top position when an auction is run on Vet Near Me 9 times out of 10, but you won't always be. So sometimes you'll find your ad not in the top spot. It may even be on the next page, depending on how the budget of not just your campaign's being set up, but what bidding strategy competitors are using as well. So hopefully that answers that one a little bit. And I encourage anyone who is concerned about their ads not showing up to talk to me. I can show you the sort of statistics that show that your ad has been seen X number of times, when it's been seen, when it's been clicked on. And then I can send through that information to help sort of sort out any concerns that ads aren't appearing.
Now, Adam, can I just jump in there for a minute?
Of course.
I'm just thinking we've got about 5 minutes to go, and I thought what I'd do is jump straight to the third question. I think the second one about how do I know if the ads are working and how efficiently, you've covered by talking about the parameters we measure and then getting an overall picture. I think that's, pretty good. I think if I have a bit of a chat about Hoppers Crossing, it's quite an interesting one, but also describes a way for AdWords to be used in a different way. So the situation is Hoppers Crossing Vet, owned and run by Joe Cavelli and his partner. in Victoria is a client of ours and has been using AdWords. Now, what happened was Joe called me one morning. He was quite upset because his clients have been with him for a long time, had contacted him and said, we thought we were ringing your practice, Joe, but it ended up being another practice down the road. It was actually a pet stock store that had opened a new vet clinic and was running AdWords. So what was happening was that Petstock was running an ad in the area of Hoppers Crossing, and the way the ad was written, or in fact the way that Google had constructed the ad, so partly what Adam was talking about before was Google will insert words that it thinks are relative to that ad or to the person who's looking. It made it look like it was the Hoppers Crossing vet. And this is one of the challenges that we have, is that the consumer or the client of Hoppers Crossing vet saw the ad, and this shows you also how powerful ads are and how people are using them more and more. People would click on the ad to ring the clinic, but it was going to Petstock, and so they were confused. And we were able to deal with that, and just how we deal with that's quite important. So normally we wouldn't run ads in the area of Hoppers Crossing because the website does so well. However, in this case, we needed to block or outcompete Petstock. So we created an ad that would appear in the search term for vet Hoppers Crossing in that area. And because of the relevance of Hoppers Crossing vet to that search term, it's much more relevant than Petstock and a few other factors. Instantly, the Hoppers Crossing ad was able to outcompete Petstock. And so the benefit, the result of that for Joe was that his clients stopped ringing him and saying, I'm ringing the wrong clinic. So it solved the problem. And from a practical point of view, what happened was that Joe's ads, which were appearing probably not even on those search screens, suddenly became the #1 ad in that area. So when someone searches vet Hoppers Crossing, if they get an ad, it will be almost every single time it will be Joe's Hoppers Crossing ad, not Petstock. And so that was a way of making it's a branding issue about making the clinic clear to your clients who you are. Any other comments on that, Adam?
I think that's a pretty good summary of that particular issue, and because of the way it's set up, it now performs extremely efficiently, and it's, I think, very unlikely Petstock would be able to sort of throw them off their #1 spot just because of how relevant the content is on the Hoppers Crossing vet website. Is
anyone out, any of you guys listening today had this issue before with clients ringing the wrong clinic? If you have, let us know. I would be interested to hear. And lastly, I'd like to say a comment, adding on to Adam's comment about, Adam mentioned before that to run an efficient AdWords campaign, there's a range of things to do, but one of them is creating landing pages on your website that are relevant to that consumer, so that if they're looking for category in Hoppers Crossing, that they come through a page that is category Hoppers Crossing. What we've found is that and Adam alluded to this, will considerably reduce the cost of your ads, and I think in some cases up to 50%. So the point being that it's worth setting up your ad campaign and monitoring it effectively, because it'll pay off in the long run in lower ad costs, or lower ad costs. You actually may still spend as much money, but you're getting twice as many ads. Now, Adam, we've got a couple of comments coming in. Yeah, so Jacinta says she's getting a few people ringing her from who are looking for another vet, I think, in a different suburb. And Jenny at Highton says that another clinic used their clinic name for Google AdWords. So that was a similar experience to Joe's. And I'd be interested to hear, Jenny, how you solved that, and whether you solved it in a similar way to the way we solved it for Joe. And Ben asked, here's one for you, Adam. Ben asked, why do the ads cost less with landing pages? And that is a great question, Ben. I'm really glad you asked it.
Yeah.
We've got time. Yeah, we've got 1 minute.
All right, a quick answer to that. So what AdWords will do is it will come up with something called a quality score, which is trying to say how relevant an ad is to a search term and how relevant the content on the page you're taking to taking the person to is relevant to their search term. So if you've got a very specific search term, let's say it's veterinary clinic schnauzer or something like that, it's very specific, and you show them an ad that's relevant to that, it says veterinary clinic schnauzer, we're the schnauzer experts, and then you have a page on your website that's all about why you're the experts when it comes to schnauzers, then Google's going to look at all of those factors and say, yeah, this is extremely relevant, and it gives you a score out of 10. If you get 10 out of 10, your costs in the auction are going to be a lot lower, because Google actually cares more about how relevant you are than how much you're spending. So someone who's trying to spend $10 per click is still going to have a hard beating someone who has taken the time to be extremely relevant to a search like that. And that's why these landing pages reduce your costs, because they make you more relevant.
And I would add to that the whole reason, the primary objective of Google is to keep consumers happy. And you can see the sense of it. If the consumer search, when the consumer searches, if the search is successful, that consumer, they'll come back and use it more. So, I think Google knows that it's got a better long-term business if it rewards those businesses that are running their AdWords campaigns effectively, because the consumers find that they continue to use the service rather than gouging and taking the highest price for search results that are not useful to the consumer. All right, well, I think that's it, guys. If that is it, it's time. We'd like to keep on track. Thank you very much for joining us. I certainly enjoyed that. Thanks, Adam, for all that information. And I think from the interaction, it's been quite useful. Please let us know what you thought. If you'd like us to do more of these, I'm certainly planning to do more. We'll have a recording that we'll send out, and we'll let you know what the next one is. And please let us know any comments. Thank you very much. All right. Have a great day. Bye. Cheers.